All right, well, fifth grade. We are continuing on here in chapter 1 today, lesson 1.5. And your first set of directions that you're going to be working with today tell you to write the value of the underlined digit. To write the value of the underlined digit. So, let's just say we have an example here. We'll call this number 1, 5.243. And it's the 4 that's underlined. So the first thing we want to think about is what place is this 4 in? Well, we know that the ones place comes right before the decimal. After the decimal comes the tenths place. So this 4 then must be in the hundredths place. So we have ones, tenths, hundredths. So the value of this underlined digit, since it's a 4, is 4 hundredths. So I'm simply looking to write the number 4 hundredths. Now, as we did yesterday, we can just write that as decimal 04, call that 4 hundredths, or if I want to think about it as 0 and 4 hundredths, that's fine. And in this second example, it might be easier for some of you to see. All I really did was change those numbers to zeros. I kept the decimal right where it was, changed the 5 to a 0, put the decimal, changed the 2 to a 0, and had 0 and 4 hundredths. So let's look at another one. Let's say that I've got 6 and 72 hundredths, and we're going to underline the 6. Well, I know that 6 is in the ones place. Okay, so I have 6 ones, and a value of a 6 in the ones place is just 6. Now, if I want to take all the other things and turn them into zeros, I can. I can put 6 and 0 hundred, or 6 and 0 tenths, or 6 and 0 hundredths. I could technically keep putting zeros all day long, and it wouldn't change the value. But really, I'd really just like you to put the most basic answer, which in this case would be 6. So that is writing the value of the underlined digit. Okay? So, talk about different forms of writing numbers. Okay? So let me just put a number here that we might have. Let's go with 8.067. Okay? So, this is what I call standard form. Okay? Or what is referred to as standard form, because it's just the regular way that we write numbers with the actual digits 8.067. That would be considered standard form. Now, we also have what we call word form, which is when we actually have to write it out the way we would actually say it. So let's think about standard form, word form, all those things. Well, remember, this is going to be 8 and, because the decimal always, we don't say decimal, we don't say point. When we say things in word form, we always use the word and in place of the decimal. So in word form, I would have 8 and whatever number comes before the decimal, that's what we put, 8 and then I want to think, okay, what place is this 7 in? Because this 7 is my last digit. So I think tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this is the thousandths, and I want to think, well, what is this whole number after the decimal? Well, it's 67. So I would say this as 8 and 67 thousandths. So that's exactly what I write. 8 and 67 thousandths, and that would be word form. The other way you're going to have to write numbers today, and we'll just look at one example here, and we'll do this same one, is what we call expanded form. Now, we talked about expanded form with regular whole numbers. Expanding means it doesn't get bigger, but we're kind of making it bigger. When we blow up a balloon, we expand the balloon. There's the same amount of balloon there was before. We're just expanding it. It appears to be bigger, okay? but the amount of balloon material itself has not changed. Okay, same thing with an expanded form. It may appear to be bigger as we turn it into a big addition problem, but the number itself, the value of it, has not changed. So when I write an expanded form, I start way to the left and I think, okay, what place is this 8 in? Well, this 8 is in the ones place. And the value of an 8 in the ones place is simply 8. So I'm going to first start just by writing the number 8. And then I'm going to put an addition sign. Well, then I go to the 0. That 0 is in the tens place. The value of a 0 in the tens place is nothing. The value of 0 is 0. So I don't have to put anything. Don't put plus 0 or plus 0.0. You just don't put anything. Next I go to the 6. Well, it's ones, tenths, hundredths. A value of the 6 in the hundredths place is 6 hundredths. So I'm going to write the number 6 hundredths. Then I'm going to go up here and I have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. I have a 7 in the thousandths place. What's the value of a 7 in the thousandths place? Well, that's 7 thousandths. So I'm going to write plus 0.007. And that would be that number in expanded form. All right? Next part of what we want to do, okay, is we're going to look at something like this, okay, where it says to compare. We looked at something like this before with whole numbers. The values of the 8s in the number 3.887, or 3 and 887 thousandths. Compare the values of the 8s in the number 3 and 887 thousandths. Well, I have an 8 in the tenths place, and I have an 8 in the hundredths place. Okay? So I'm thinking, okay, well, this is worth 8 tenths. The 8 in the tenths place is worth 8 tenths. The 8 in the hundredths place is worth 8 hundredths. So I want to compare the values. Well, as we talked about yesterday, okay, or in one of the previous lessons, maybe it wasn't yesterday's, I kind of lose track. Remember when we multiply things or divide things by 10, we're just moving the decimal for each 0, okay? Since there's 1 0 in 10, if I was multiplying it by 10, I would move the decimal 1 place to the right. If I was dividing by 10, I would move the decimal 1 place to the left. So I see that in 8 hundredths here, that if I were to take this decimal and move it 1 place to the left, or essentially multiply it by 10, I would get the same thing as I have here, 8 tenths, because my decimal would be here right before the 8. So when I compare the values, I can say that 8 tenths is 10 times as much as 8 hundredths. Or I could kind of flip that around and say, well, 8 hundredths is 1/10 of 8 tenths. Different ways of saying the exact same thing. All right, so one last thing we want to look at. Let's say, for example, I got a number, because you might get some story problems. Let's say I get that, 2.708. It's going to give you maybe a little story problem, and it's going to ask you to put the number in word form. So if I want to think about this number, 2.708, putting it in word form, of course, it's going to start 2 and. What comes before the decimal? Well, just a 2. So we're going to start with 2 and then I'm thinking, okay, well, what place is this 8 in? Well, I have the tenths, then I have the hundredths, then I have the thousandths. Those that's 8 is in the thousandths place. Well, 708, if I just think about that and take out the 2, I think of it as 708. Okay? So it's 2 and 708 thousandths. 2 and 708 thousandths. 2 and 708 thousandths. Okay? So that's kind of what we're doing in lesson 1.5. All right, talk to you later. 5th graders. Bye.